Hello everyone, my name is Tim Lambert and I'm the Director of Construction Resources here at Practical. I spent 30 years in pre-con and project management and I'm excited to see this solution. So today we're going to take a look at buyout for Sage Estimating. Most of you are already familiar with Sage Estimating. It's the number one pre-con estimating solution on the market today. And through models and advanced assemblies, you can create project estimates that can be pushed into your accounting solution at the job, sub-job, cost code, category level. This new solution takes things up a notch. With buyout for Sage Estimating, you can pull the estimate items into buyout, take those items and create bid packages. From the bid packages, you've got requests for proposals. From RFPs, you've got awarded commitments, and from the commitments, they push straight into your accounting solution. It was developed from the ground up specifically for Sage Estimating SQL. This wasn't an add-on. It wasn't a pre-existing, the pervasive edition that's been updated. This was developed specifically for Estimating SQL. It has shared licensing, so you can get more out of your buck, share that within the office. It sits on a Microsoft SQL backbone, so it is underpinned with either SQL Express or Standard. And it can also share an instance with your Sage estimating software, making it a little easier on the IT so they don't have as much to back up. So, with today's first solution in hand, let's hop in and take a look. As you can see, buyout is in a standard format for Windows software. Menus across the top, ribbon underneath. From here, we can create our buyout packages. We can open packages. We can copy packages. If I've got an existing package, if I'm a spec builder and this is model 42-3, and I've done this model 15 times, I can reuse that same bid package. I can bring it up. I can reassign vendors. I can do my RFPs, do everything new, but have my structure already there. I can also manage my packages, and so I'm just going to go into the package management. Here, because it's a SQL product, there's not actually folders, there's tree structure. And so I can have multiple branches coming off of my database, and in each one I can have different buyout packages. So I can organize them whether it's at a type level, this is industrial, commercial, so forth, or the process that the job is going through. This is a current job, this is an old job. Really is up to you. You can also delete or get rid of packages from this same menu. Entirely up to you how you set up your structure. There are some settings in the software. These are initial settings. Once you've done those, you don't have to change, but you've always got that option. You need to set up your default company, who is going to be sending out when you do your RFPs and your commitments, what name's going to be on the piece of paper. You have import settings. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how vendor selection and pricing is set up, but I want to go ahead and go through some of the other settings that are in here. When you bring your data in from estimating, you really want that data to be in a form that's functional. You don't want to have to manually tinker with everything. And so I've decided to bring in all of my material at a bill of materials class level. And so that setting that is in my Sage Estimating database that's assigned to every item, it's going to use that to pre-sort my data. Makes it a little easier for me to put my packages together. And on my subcontracts, I'm going by the group phase code. You can have multiple levels of sorting, as many as you need to get the packages the way you want them. And then the quote settings and the rounding settings are really about when is this data due? Am I going to automatically pick my lowest? What time is this due? And how I want to bring the data in. These three settings can be reset at a package level. So each package can be different. These are just my default settings for originally coming in. There's also some operation settings that we need to go over. This is at an accounting package level, and so as you can see, this is Sage 100 contractor settings. The 300 settings are slightly different, and I'll go over that. I've decided to combine my items on my subcontract, so if I've got 50 items and they're all under the same cost code cost type, they're going to get combined together on my subcontract. And I've decided, rather than asking somebody to manually enter or let the software enter, I've decided to generate my commitment codes. And so you can see what I've set up. I've an SC, my job number, a separator, and 3 digits. And this kind of gives you an example of how it's going to create it. Same thing in purchasing. It'll auto-generate. And I've decided not to combine my items. I want the individual item levels on my PO. So rather than sending a PO that just says framing package, I can send a PO that actually has the detail items that I want. That way I get what I want. So I'm going to hop over into my 300 database so you can see what that looks like as well. So this is accounting. This ties into the accounting software, and so this does not bypass the security it's built in. You have to actually sign into each of the softwares as a user. It doesn't take up one of your licenses over there, but it does determine your level of access into the software. So the security that's set up in your accounting gets pushed over into here. And so if I look at my operations over here, they're slightly different. I've decided to let the system assign, and again, I've got some set up here. I'm going to automatically commit. If you're familiar with 300, you have the option of whether or not to commit. So you could push these over as uncommitted commitments and then go into the software itself, go into 300 and commit them, or you can let the software push it over as a committed item. And again, I've got my subcontracts summarized and my POs at an item level. Same process. So let's get started and create a new bid package. So before we bring in our first package, let's talk a little bit about where it's coming from. And so I want to bring up here, I've got estimating open. I've got an estimate here. It's not a very complicated estimate. It's simple, but it's got all the parts that we need to create our bid package. And so just kind of go through things. As part of this, when I'm setting everything up, when I was doing my initial bid, I went ahead and got a quote from one of my subs. And so I went ahead and put those in. You got that option in estimating to specify who you got your quotes from, and you set up your bid grid. And so in this case, I got a quote from George, and so I've got it in my estimate, and we'll talk about why that matters a little bit later. And I've got a breakdown. We talked about how, over on the settings, we talked about how things are broken out. And so I've got a sequence over here that I call material class. This kind of gives me a picture of what it's going to look like when I get it in buyout. This is sorted at my bill of material classes. So you can kind of see how that is. And again, George hanging out over here, but I don't have anything in my vendor name. That's what everything looks like to start with. So I'm going to bring this package into buyout. And so I've got a new package. It's in my 300 database, and I'm going to call this 1 and event 1 project. I could put it, if I had a sub over here, if I had a tree structure, I could put it in any folder I wanted to. I'm going to click OK. It's going to set up my package. And so now I can go in, and you can see here there's a tab section that runs across here. This is basically your flow chart. This is the process that you go through. You'll set up the package, you'll group the items, you'll select the vendors, commit and review. And so we'll go through each one of these individually. I've got everything set up here. Over in my contacts, it pre-fills from my setup screen. I can pick a client, so I'm just going to go in and look. This is pulling from my estimating address book. So I'm going to say I'm doing this for Campbell Builders. That's my client. I can pick an architect, I can pick an engineer. Over in the options, I can come in, I can put the job site in, and so I'm going to say this is my event 1 and Lane Concord NC. You know, we talked about those options before. I can change my dates. I can change the number of due days. I can say this one, I'm going to allow 15 days on these bids. I can round my quantities, and for POs, I can pick the tax group. That way everything gets calculated properly. I'm going to hop back up to my general, and I'm going to import an estimate. And so I'll go out. I'm going to look at this estimate, which is my one we were just looking at. Because when I set this estimate up, I had assigned it to a job so I could push my budget over. I've got a job here, and so it pre-fills. If I didn't already assign it, I could still bring it in and I could pick from my accounting software. It actually pulls out and lets you pick those individual jobs. So I import that in. That's all I need for a setup. Everything is here. Everything is ready to go to that next level. I can edit it if I want to. And so if I, if I pick the estimate and I edit it, I can go back in and make some changes. And I could take it out and re-import. So I've got those options. So now that we've got our package set up, let's go to the next level. I'm going to go to my group items. We have options that we can look at here. I can bring everything, I can look at it at a group phase, and so I can look at my individual items. If I click on this, it's going to reduce what I see over here. If I want to look at this at a location level, it's going to pull the locations from the estimate. It's going to sort it. Again, I can click on individual locations, ways to see the data. What matters when I get over to the select vendor is this column. This is my quote group. This is how I've decided to bring it in. I pre-sorted everything on those settings as we did it, and so I've got a view at a quote group level. And so in this case, mine is the category and then the material class. For subs, it's the group, and for equipment, it's the group. I can create as many different views as I want to. I'm just going to go into the edit so you can kind of see what this one looks like. I've got it set up, estimate item category, and then quote group as the description underneath it. I can decide how I want to sort it. I've got it sorted at the estimate ID. I could pull that out and decide I want to sort it the same way that I have it categorized out. And so I could go in and say I'm going to sort at a material class. There we go, bill of material class, and I can bring that in. It's best to pick a sort, and the reason I say that is the data is going to sort by default the way it is in estimating, and so it's better to decide how you want your sorts. You can set up your columns. I can have as many or as few as I want to. I can pull from this list and set up my columns. And then I can actually set up some filters. So if I don't want to see certain things, I could have specific groups that say, I only want to see woods and plastics, or I only want to see electrical or pre-construction, all of those things. I can decide how I want to see it. And once I've set that up, I've got my group. And so that's how those things pull over. At this point, I can look at my individual items and decide, is this the way I want to quote this? Because again, it's going to create packages based on this quote package that's set up. So if I've got something here that I actually want to put somewhere else, I've got that option. I can go in and say I'm going to actually quote this as part of my lumber package instead of fasteners. And so it lets you rearrange, make it the way you want it to make. Again, it depends on what you have in estimating as it comes over. So it may take a little tweaking to get your estimating database to match up the way you want to bid, but it's worth that front end so that you get the data that you want on the outside. We talked earlier about the ribbon structure, and you can see up here is the ribbon. I can combine items. So for example, you can see here that I've got the same item listed twice because it's the way it pulled in. If I wanted to, I can combine my items, and it's going to pull those in. Excuse me. Or I can not combine them. I can look and show detail. There is a detail window that actually pulls up everything that's over in estimating at that item level. So I can look at each one of these and see what's over in estimating. I can assign new quote groups if I want to. I can create one-time items, just like in estimating. If I need to add something to a PO that isn't in there, or to a commitment that isn't already in the estimate, something came in last minute and I need to add it, I can add my one-time items here. So from groups, we go to vendors. And so I have everything that's lined up in my quote group the way I'd wanted. I have my materials here, my subcontracts over here. As you can see, I've got new things up here at the ribbon. I can still add new groups if I want to, and I can edit groups if I want to. I can include vendors, and so vendors is where I'm going to add people to do quotes. If you look at a couple items here, talked about this earlier, I've already got some vendors assigned. George, we know. George came from my setting that said I want to automatically create quotes based on stored and automatically create vendors that are in there. So it pulled George over, and then on this second thing, quote from stored pricing. Stored pricing is something that's a little new to this versus the old version of buyout. In the past, I have already got some pricing from my hardware guy. He gave me pricing, he told me the due date and so forth, and I've got dates for it, and that's stored in the software, and I can actually look at it. So if I go over here in pricing, my 3 items here are priced in my database. I can, when this comes in and I create my pricing, I can put some effective dates in here. So if I'm saying this quote is going to be good as of June 31st, whatever date I pick, if my stored pricing is good for that date range, it will automatically pull in and create that vendor and that quote. I don't have to use it, but it pre-fills. And any pricing that I get as I go through the package, I can push out. So I can, if I've got pricing here for George, I can actually push out and store that pricing, and it would be stored under George Excavating, and I could put a date in so that when it expired, it didn't pull in anymore. Anyway, I've already got a quote for those things. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some new vendors. And so I'm going to go into my lumber package and I'm going to include a vendor. I can do that here or I can do that here in the menu structure. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to pick Cooks. So we'll go. And again, right now I'm pulling from my estimating address book. Is where these things come from. Also, I'm going to add a new vendor, and I'm going to grab Oregon Lumber, and I'm going to grab somebody for my glass. And so I'm going to use Acme. If I had picked the wrong one, if I picked the wrong one here and I shouldn't have, I can delete that quote and it takes it back out. And now I can go back in, I can include a vendor, and again, I'll pick Acme. It's fairly forgiving on how the process goes. So once I've picked, and you notice I haven't picked everything at this point. Buyout's designed to let you work on it at your pace. So I could take one thing and run it all the way through and start over. I can work on 3 or 4 things. I've got my package that's opened here. If I had another buyout package, I could have it open. I could be working on 2 different ones at the same time. It's as flexible as you need it to be when it comes to working in. So I'm going to go back to my lumber. I've got my lumber here, and I've decided that at this time I'm ready to get some quotes. It's time to get some quotes. And so as it says, I can go up here. Since I've selected lumber, and I go over and I say send quotes, it's going to pick up everything that has a vendor assigned to it. Well, I'm going to call Larson and see how that pricing is, so I'm not going to send him an RFP. Since I've already got my quote directly from George, I'm not going to send him an RFP. I'm only going to send it to my lumber and my glass guy. You've got some options. You can print these and just show you kind of what it looks like. These are stock reports that are built into the software. In future releases, there's going to be some customization available so that you can create what you create a form that you find more pleasing. You can put your logo on that thing. But for now, this gives you everything that you need. You can send out this request, and I can print it. If I've got a fax that's tied into my computer, I can actually fax it out, or I can email it. And when I email it, I have a couple options. So I'm actually going to split this up, and I'm going to email this one first. And so I've got email addresses set up for these vendors in my estimating database. And so it pulls those in, and I'm going to send these as an email. It's going to go out, it's going to process, it's going to send those out. And then I'm going to go back into send request. And this time, I'm going to do the glass. And in this case, I'm going to do the attachment. And I'm not going to do George right now, so I'm going to send those. And so built into the software, it will push that data out. And just to give you a quick look at what that looks like, I'm going to open this up. I just got this quote. We'll slide this over here. It emails it in. This one went to Cook's Lumber. Here are the individual pieces that I want. I want him to do a price and send it back. He has the option at that point to hit reply. It's going to pull up, and he can come in here and type his pricing in. This is $5.25 and so forth. You can hit send, and it sends it back so he can respond immediately. If you want to give them a little more flexibility, you open this one up. This is the one I sent second. This is from Acme Door. It doesn't have any detail below it. The detail is in the Excel spreadsheet. So you can attach that Excel spreadsheet. You can send that out. They can fill it out, put the quote in, send it back to you, and you've got your information. So let me pull this up so you can see what it looks like. I've got a few add-ons on my Excel, so it takes a little bit for mine to come up. There. So you can see it has all the detail, pulls everything out, and you can put those in. So exit out of here, exit out of here. So I've sent out my RFPs. As you notice, I've got send dates in here now that pull in and show that everything is sent. If I go down here to glass, I've got a send date for my glass. And now I'm getting them back in. I've got an email back in from Cook's Lumber. And so go over here. I'm going to click on Cook's Lumber, and it's giving me the detail here, and I can actually come in and put my information in. So just so that I know I'm pretty close, I've got $3, $5, and $3 is how it's broke out. So I'm going to go into Cook's, and let's say that I get a $3 quote, I get a $4.85 quote, and I get a $2.50 quote. And that's the quote that comes in from Cook's. I can go into Oregon Lumber. They gave me their quote. They're $3.25, $5.10, and $2. Now, if I'm looking at this package, I can see that Oregon Lumber is cheaper. And I can see it because the software marks it. It marks that arrow that shows you who the lowest bidder is. And you can make those decisions at that point. Do I want to take my lowest bidder? Do I want to take my preferred? In my case, Cook's is my preferred. And so I'm going to go up to Cook's, and I can select this quote. I can do it here. I can right click, and I can select my quote here. I can do it here and right click and select my quote. Once I've selected it, it's starred. That's who I'm going to award this commitment to. I haven't heard back from Acme yet, so I don't know, but I do know that I got a hard quote from George, and that's who I'm going to use for this, and so I'm going to select him as well. And so if I look at his group, he's now got a star. And so I've picked two guys, and I'm ready to actually send these out. So now I'm going to the next stage, commit. You don't have to do the entire package at one time. You can do it in pieces, and so I'm doing mine in pieces. If you'll notice, I've got some vendor numbers here. Those vendor numbers are my vendor over in my 300 database. It would be the same for 100. It would be your vendors in 100. This allows you to tie your AP vendors to your address book that's in estimating. This is a one-time connection. You notice it pre-filled when I came over here. I've made this connection before. You'll have a yellow here if you haven't made it. You hit three dots, you go in, you make that connection, and it remembers. And so it keeps that information there. You don't have to keep up with it. It's going to make it and tie it together. At this point, I can commit both of these. I can commit one of these. It's my option. You can see I have kind of a flow here. I can also combine items. So if I want to combine them together on the PO, I can do that. If I want to leave them separate, I can. So I'm going to create my commitment. Reminds me I've got two, and where it's sending it, it will go out. It'll create a report that tells me what happened and if there are any warnings, just so I know. I should receive a warning for this, and I know I'll receive a warning because I haven't created a budget over in 300 for this job. So when it brings this up, it's going to tell me my cost is exceeded. So it gives you those warnings, but I've got my two commitments set up. Just to show you what those two commitments look like, I can go in, and let me just exit out here. I have job cost open over here, and I'm going to scoot it down, and I can see my commitment numbers right here. Those are the ones I set up. So if I go into task and I go in commitments, I can go into SC 20100-001. I can pull up this commitment in job cost. I've got my two little line items here. If I want to look at PO 20100-001, here are my line items that came in. If I want to create some scope information here, you've got your option. You can print these documents from inside Buyout. You can wait till they're over in accounting and print them from there. It really is up to you how you process this. If for some reason, after I've sent the documents out and I create my document and I print it out and I send it to, for example, Cook's Lambert, they come back and say they can't fulfill it. They're not going to be able to get me the information. I got to get somebody else. I can come in to my accounting software. I go into my commitment. I bring up, scroll all the way down here to the bottom. Bring up my lumber, and I'm going to delete this commitment and finish it up. So I come over and uncommit. So now I can go back. I can pick somebody else. This one's not going to work. So I can go back up. I can go to Oregon, and I can select this one. So now Oregon is selected, and then now I can go over to my commit. Got Oregon. I haven't matched up Oregon, so I would go out. I'd find Oregon in my list. Hit OK, commitment out. So you've got some flexibility. This isn't a hard and fast tie-in. It allows you to run things out. So we've awarded our commitments, we pushed them out, and now it's time to see where we stand. And so there's a review tab that's out here at the end. It lets you look at your process. So I can see here that I had 24 items totaling $23,000 over in my estimate that got pushed over. How that breaks out at a category level. I can see what's been bought out. I can see what percentage is remaining to buy out, anything that's undersigned. So this gives you that look. Am I finished with my package? And you can now work through it. There's also, as part of this, there's some reports here. You have a quote group report, an item report, a commitment report. So if I want to look at my item report, just to pick one, it gives you a detail of where it stands. I can look at this. I can see this item is tied to each one of these pieces. I can see what my breakout is. If I want to look at my quote group, it's going to give me that detail level, this group, broken out at my material class. I can also print out my commitments list to see where I stand, and I've got a vendor list. I can look at my names, addresses, emails, and so forth. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the help screen. And so if you hit on the help tab, you can see there's some documentation that's part of the software. There's a knowledge base. You can go out to the Event One website. It'll link you to the knowledge base. There are tutorials that walk you through everything that I've talked about, how to set your software up initially. If you find a problem, you can report it direct from here. If there's something you'd like to see different, you put it here. Event One will look at this before they look at anything else. They look at the number of enhancements that people want for different things. And so if you're interested, you do that. And you can also check on your updates. I can go here, I can check, I have no new updates, and so pull it from there. That is Buyout for Sage Estimating. If you have any questions and you want to contact us, please feel free to contact me. Actually, let me pop that where you can see it. My name is Tim Lambert. You've got my phone number, my email address. Also, if you're interested in looking at more detail on Buyout or any other of the Sage solutions for construction, you can find information at practicalsoftwaresolutions.com/construction. Thanks, take care, be safe out there, and I appreciate you joining us.